Okay, today we're going to talk about post-separation support and alimony. Post-separation support is basically temporary alimony. It's often awarded as a quick gap measure to provide some funds to a dependent spouse during the pendency of litigation. Once the parties complete their equitable distribution action or come to the point of divorce, that's when an alimony order is often entered in perpetuity. If you've got a really short marriage, less than say 3 years, you might be able to get post-separation support, but depending on the judge, it's possible you may not see any kind of alimony. At least in my experience, judges often will award alimony for the number of years you've been married up to say 6 or 7. Once you go over a 7-year threshold, you've exceeded the national average for the amount of time to be married. And therefore, in my experience, a judge is likely to enter alimony as permanent alimony. And at that point, the only way it can be terminated is if you cohabitate, if you remarry, or if either party dies. So, what does the court consider when they're looking at post-separation support or alimony? The first issue is purely economic. The question is one spouse the supporting spouse and the other spouse dependent? You look at the comparison of incomes between the spouses, and the court makes a determination about whether that individual is substantially dependent upon the other spouse for their income and their needs, or actually dependent. Usually, if the income is grossly different, for example, say a husband makes 120 grand a year and the wife makes 30 grand a year, it's fairly easy to show that the wife is dependent upon the husband in that case for spousal support, because in order for her to maintain her standard of living to which she's become accustomed, she needs ongoing and continued support from her husband. There are some things that enter spousal support where we move away from North Carolina's traditional no-fault divorce and we start talking about fault. If the dependent spouse has committed fault, that can be a bar to spousal support, whether temporary or permanent. And when we talk about marital fault, there's a whole list of things. Most people think of adultery, and certainly adultery, if proven, can be a bar to spousal support. There are other types of fault, one of which is abandonment in North Carolina. And so since we're going through this workshop to try and give you the information that you need before you make a change and you separate from your spouse, you really need to talk with an attorney about the specifics of your case to see whether your leaving or their leaving would constitute abandonment such that it would affect your alimony claim. When we go into court, if fault's not an issue, we're just going to be talking about economics. What did each party make and what are their expenses? And it's more expensive, let's face it, it's more expensive for two people to live separately than it is together. So often, even when there is a dependent spouse, the court's not going to award enough money to maintain them in the standard to which they'd become accustomed. Simply because now both parties have utility bills, both parties have mortgages, both parties have internet, and you lose all those efficiencies of living together. We're in one of the family law courtrooms in the New Hanover County Courthouse. This is where it all happens. The judge sits up here, makes his decisions or her decisions concerning child custody, property division, spousal support, alimony, attorney fees, everything. Before you sit in that witness chair, you need to know how to approach your case, and that's what we're going to help you with today. Now let's talk a little bit about alimony and spousal support. When we have a hearing on alimony and spousal support, Each side comes to court with financial standing affidavits. They're required under our local rules, and you can get one on our website. In your financial standing affidavit, you're going to list your income and your expenses. One thing that we help our clients do is get receipts for each expense they have. So if you say that you spend $300 a month on food, we want documentation that proves you spend $300 a month on food. The court will consider whether you're the dependent spouse or the supporting spouse, and in making that determination, they'll also determine whether you have the ability to pay spousal support and if you should be the recipient of spousal support. That's how it works.
In order to document living expenses for a client's post-separation support hearing, I request mortgage or rent statements, car payment statements, pay stubs, utilities, grocery receipts, etc.
What kind of things would you ask the client to start collecting to try and prove adultery?
Any emails that they've discovered, pictures, witnesses, people who know about it, and maybe spent some time with the other party.
So that gives you an overview of how spousal support and alimony work. What you need to do is see the link to the right for financial standing affidavit. Go ahead and download that, fill it out, and start collecting your documentation in terms of your income and your expenses so that we can prepare for the spousal support hearing, whether we're advancing a claim or defending you. Tomorrow, come back, you'll get an email from us. We'll be talking about property division, also known as equitable distribution, and we'll be nearing the end of our journey together on this workshop. Thanks.